Do you want to be a web server infra company, or do you want to be Google or Amazon? We decided we wanted to be Google or Amazon.
Today we welcome Varun Mohan. He co-founded one of the fastest growing, most disruptive unicorns in the software space. In this episode, we talk about the early strategies which have helped him get to unicorn status in just 3.5 years.
The most important thing is
we talk about the state of the AI landscape.
People probably believe, at least for AI for software development, that there are going to be fewer developers. I actually believe that there will be more.
The importance of understanding exceptional go-to-market.
I think about go-to-market as effectively you are pouring gas on a tiny fire, and hopefully you can make this massive explosion happen.
And how John McMahon and his playbook community were a big inspiration for the organization that they're building today. This is his playbook.
This episode is brought to you by Pipeline Generation AI, an account-based intelligence platform that drives high-quality engagement with your top target accounts.
Varun, welcome to the show.
Great to be on the pod, guys.
You're currently the CEO and founder of Codium, an AI software company which has reached unicorn status, so congratulations on that. I suppose the very first part of this podcast is to really understand how, in a period of just 3.5 years, you've been able to really break that ceiling and create a unicorn in the AI space. So how have you managed to do this, Varun?
Yeah, so a little bit of the backstory of the company. Before this, I worked at a company called Neuro. It's an autonomous vehicle company. They realized that deep learning was going to fundamentally transform many industries and was going to usher in brand new applications. After that, I actually started the company with my co-founder, who I've known since middle school. We did actually a lot of classes together, even at MIT, and worked on building this company out called Exafunction. And notice that's not actually what Codium is called right now. And the point of that business was to fundamentally provide GPU virtualization capabilities. So the ability to run these deep learning workloads really efficiently. And at the time, we were able to, with a small team of people, no sales rep, we were able to get to a couple million in revenue and manage upwards of 10,000 GPUs. But hey, we're talking and we're not actually working on this product. So what really happened? The middle of 2022 came around, and transformers, which were the underlying technology for these GPT models, started to become very popular. And this is a key part for every sort of software company, which is that when transformers became very popular, it basically implied that deep learning models were largely going to look like the transformer architecture. And in a world in which we provide infrastructure, if the type of software we were providing infrastructure for was largely looking all the same, we would become a commodity. So we needed to make a decision to effectively change the direction of the company. And what we decided to do was take our infrastructure and actually go out and verticalize and build out this product called Codium. And that was a pretty big risk that we took. And obviously right now, that has proven to be the right decision. We've basically grown tremendously. We have hundreds of thousands of users that use the product, and tens of Fortune 100 and 500 companies that are currently deployed and use Codium right now internally.
I mean, it's a very brave decision, Varun. You know, many founders are known for being quite strong-minded when it comes to the organization and the vision that they have. And a lot of the time you can start to ignore the signals and perhaps almost stick to the original plan. How did you know that this was the right pivot? And what did you do about it to really validate that the new direction was the right direction for you in the business?
I think this is maybe a very hard truth, which is that for a startup, the most important thing that is important is intellectual honesty. And I think this is actually very different than a big company where, the company has a lot of resources. So it's very easy to manage up, convince people at the top that you need more resources, despite the fact that your initiative doesn't. But at a startup, if you play these kind of games, the company just dies. And I think we all went in understanding that with a good deal of humility that, hey, we could be wrong, right? The market is actually a much more powerful sort of entity than any one of us at the company, despite how smart we are. And given that, we sort of recognize that given a shift towards the commoditization of the types of models you ran, being an infrastructure company was probably not the right play. And maybe the analogy we drove that gave us sort of some confidence in the direction was if you look in the early days of the internet, you go back to 2000. Do you want to be a web server infra company, or do you want to be Google or Amazon? And I think we decided we wanted to be Google or Amazon in that case. We wanted to be an actual application company. And that's why we built out Codium. And I guess some of the intuition on why we decided to do that was because we were early adopters of a product called GitHub Copilot, but we thought it was just the tip of the iceberg of what the future of software engineering coupled with AI was going to look like. And given that we were all motivated and passionate about the space, at the very least, hey, we could be wrong, but at least we'd be passionate and wrong. And then worst case, we would need to pivot again. And that's the reality and the hard part about a startup, right? No one has a monopoly on the right ideas. And fundamentally, there's no reason why your first idea is the right idea.
So what did you do to really validate that idea?
So when we launched the product, we were early adopters of Copilots. We knew the technology had some real use case there. But when we launched, because we actually built our own infrastructure, we launched the product entirely for free. And this was largely a crazy thing to do. Because if you look at products like Copilot, there were actually news in the Wall Street Journal about how the company's burning tens of dollars per user per month. But we launched the product for free and used our infrastructure as a way to do that. And we knew by being vertically integrated and actually running the software ourselves, training the models ourselves, we would get massive amounts of infrastructure and cost advantages to be able to serve across many users. And this let us acquire users really, really quickly, right? And this is one of those things where, hey, we knew that the product was fundamentally going to be useful. And hey, if we built a useful product and we couldn't acquire users, probably there's something wrong, right? And I think we started with the premise of how do we create value? And then very quickly, enterprises start to reach out. And then we went into the part of the business, which was how do we actually capture some value? And maybe capturing some value is a little bit of a greedy way of saying that. But basically, in some ways, partner with companies and not only give them a ton of value, but also build a real business in parallel instead of just launching out a free product.
Why did you think it was important for you to be in the trenches to go and continue to generate revenue, even though you knew that there was something to sell?
Yeah. So I think the fundamental reason is when you sort of want to sell a product, you need to, obviously you should be a painkiller, not just a vitamin. You need to solve real pain for a company. There needs to be real positive business outcomes from purchasing the product. And you need to solve some negative state that the company's in right now. And I think if the founder themselves cannot sell $1 of the product of the product, it is probably a bad idea to hire a sales team to figure out how to sell 100, right? And I think I was not in my sort of mind, I didn't see a scalable path for the company to increase sales, right? Regardless of how I was going to skin the cat. And then this is sort of something that I deeply believe at the company. If someone at the company can't figure out how to get it there 1% of the way, and I'm not saying I'm a good seller, if someone can't get 1% of the way there, it is probably very hard for someone else to get 50% of the way there, right? You're setting them up for failure. And by the way, this is not true at all for Codium, right? There's a very repeatable motion here, which is why the sales team is growing very, very quickly. So this is one of those cases where actually for me, I sort of took it upon myself to make sure that there was some repeatable path so that we could make a sales team succeed. And the fact that I didn't see that was actually a big reason for us pivoting the company.
Why did you specifically choose John McMahon out of all of the books or the masters of sales, so to speak? Why specifically John McMahon and obviously, his people like Carlos de la Torre?
I think for one, it is just like incredibly well known, at least in my generation, that MongoDB has built a really, really fantastic sort of sales organization. So just from that perspective alone, I really wanted Carlos to be involved with the company. And I think from there, sort of the processes and playbooks and the approaches that these folks take actually derive a lot from John McMahon's sort of style of sales. And I don't want to say it is like an exact process, right? That almost makes it feel like there's no sort of science or art involved. There definitely is. It is dependent on the company, what types of products and services you sell. But I think that gave a very quantitative approach to think about sales. And I think people like to think about sales. And this was actually something that completely changed after starting the company, as if it is something where there's someone slick, arrogant, that's trying to compel someone to purchase something that they don't need. But I think the Qualified Sales Leader and these kinds of books very clearly illustrate how it is actually really about solving pain, right? It is about solving pain. And if you can solve pain for your customer, then creating a process and playbook by which you can actually be great partners with these companies, right? And I think that really resonated with me. And from very early on, I had a deep respect for, hey, the way you succeed as a company is not just build a great product, it is build a best-in-class go-to-market team as well.
If you were to give some advice to aspiring founders, you were talking to kind of some of the MIT alumni, or those that are really thinking, I want to go out and build, what would be the best piece of advice that you could give them in that early kind of thought process, the inception phase?
I think in the very beginning, I will be very honest, product market fit and building a product that people want is really, really important, right? There's no way to sort of get around that. And you can kind of see that here, right? We did not build a scalable go-to-market org when we were a GPU virtualization company, but we have built one today. And that's largely because we didn't have the kind of product market fit that I believe we needed to have to go out and build a go-to-market function. And I think about go-to-market as effectively you are pouring gas on a tiny fire, right? And hopefully you can make this massive explosion happen because of that. And I think those principles don't really change, but I think the sort of mentality that might need to change is, hey, once there is product market fit, I think there's a trap where a lot of people want to believe the way to scale sales is by just going down this product-led growth path. And I think product-led growth is a very, very interesting idea, and it's very useful at times, and it can be like a big revenue generator. But I think at the same time, it is hard to justify purely going through a product-led growth function if there are large enterprises that can purchase your product and make scalable, rational decisions. And if the long term of your product is to be purchased by large enterprises, then you should probably build out a real enterprise sales motion for your company. Because I think the justification to go out and build an enterprise sales motion, the deeper you go into product-led growth, gets harder and harder. Because the types of ways in which you scale product-led growth don't look at all like the types of ways you scale enterprise sales. And I think that's maybe one thing I would tell technical founders, that this is one of those things that feels operationally more challenging, and it is, but it enables you to build substantially more scalable businesses if you actually go down that path.
Let's talk a little bit about the AI market, right? Because there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of money. What are your views on the industry, and what are your predictions as to the direction in which AI is going to take the industry as a whole?
I think this is going to be something that a lot of people have said. We're going to tremendously overestimate how much it's going to change our lives in the next year, and we will underestimate how much it will change our lives in the next 10 years. And I think one clear sort of example of this is the autonomous vehicle space. You go to 2015, TechCrunch writes, this is going to be the year of autonomous vehicles. In 2024, they're writing, is this the year of AV? Now, on the other hand, if you actually come to San Francisco, there are autonomous vehicles everywhere, and it actually is fundamentally changing the way people move around the city, right? So it's starting to happen, but think about how early they called it, right? So I think the same thing is going to happen here. There will be a bunch of people that are going to kind of act as if everyone's jobs are going to disappear in the next year. And I think fundamentally that is a like maybe a very pessimistic way to look at it. The way to actually think about it is the way the knowledge force looks like in 10 years is going to look radically different. Maybe one interesting take I have is people probably believe, at least for AI for software development, that there are going to be fewer developers 10 years from now because of the advent of AI. I actually believe that there will be more. And it's about this very unique sort of aspect of creating technology, which software is a part of, which is that there's no limit to the amount of technology the world can consume. It's very different than food. If I found a way to actually generate 10 times the amount of food that I'm generating today, there's not enough people to sort of consume all that food, right? I can't eat 20,000 calories every day. I can probably eat 3,000, but not 20,000, right? On the other hand, for technology, you go talk to a global CIO. When was the last time they said, I'm done with technology, I don't want more? So I think what's going to ultimately end up happening is the cost to do each individual unit of knowledge work will go down. But I think as the cost goes down, actually the number of people doing it and the number of sort of knowledge work items and, for example, software that's going to get produced will go up tremendously. And I think you will see businesses investing more into knowledge work because they get even more leverage from knowledge work than they had in the past. So I think fundamentally, this technology is going to provide a lot of leverage. I think the amount we will get done on a per person basis will go up, but there will be more people doing it.
Thanks to our sponsor, Pipeline Generation AI, the platform that researches your top accounts, creates insights and assets to help you engage more effectively. Elevate your conversations and transform your pipeline with Pipeline Generation AI today.
So in terms of how Codium and now, how you're building your organization, how important is the fact that you can prove ROI and tangible value compared to maybe some of the other AI companies that are kind of still trying to figure that out? How important is that?
It's tremendously important. When you talk to CIOs at most of the large companies, the biggest worry that they have for AI is, am I just purchasing shelfware, right? It's a very interesting demo, but does it actually get integrated into everyday's day-to-day workflow? One thing that's incredibly useful about Codium is it is a daily use product wherever the developer is. Right now in the IDE, very soon where they review code and all the aspects of the software development lifecycle, right? And we are very clearly able to indicate what fraction of the code that's being committed is actually generated by our software. And right now it's close to a half, which is genuinely crazy that this category went from not existing 3.5 years ago to now generating half of the software that developers are ultimately writing and committing into the code base. So these kinds of metrics are really important because think about it. Every company now is an AI company. You go down the 101 in San Francisco and PagerDuty is an AI company now, right? A company that does alert reporting. So nothing wrong with PagerDuty, but everyone wants to claim they have a really, really sexy AI feature. But I think ROI and just being a product that very clearly can be tied to productivity is incredibly valuable to us to actually make the case that companies should be purchasing the product.
Talk to us about your journey of, now bringing that in and integrating that sales motion into your business, that playbook into your business. And what are some of the key things that you started to see in that process?
Yeah, so Carlos was actually involved with the company when we were a GPU virtualization company. Actually talking to him was a big factor for why we never hired a sales rep. Because I thought if we did actually, before we sort of had a repeatable process, we were just setting them up for failure. We were hiring someone just to see them fail. And you've known the stories of all these startups that hire sales reps. And largely speaking, there shouldn't be any sales reps at this company. Not because these sales reps are unqualified, but because there's no product to really sell at the company. I think that was very helpful because it gave us also a North Star of, hey, if we pivot, what are the initial conditions that would enable us to actually go out and build a scalable sales team? And I will say one thing, the first time we hired a sales rep at the company was after 10 Fortune 500 companies reached out to Codium to run the product themselves and actually use the product, right? So that was the barrier for us to go out and hire a single rep. And this is largely because inside the DNA of our company, I really hate the idea of hiring people and seeing them fail, right? Because usually what that means if we hire someone good is it was us that was the problem, right? And not only does that slow down the company, we make someone else suffer in the process, right? So I want to make sure whenever we do a hire, actually, we make sure that they are not only successful, they are underwater. There's so much work for them to do. They are like, holy crap, how did this company not hire someone before this, right? And I think for us, it was the same process. The moment we actually had this many enterprises sort of reach out to us, we actually ran enterprise sales within the company without a sales rep for many deals. And we very quickly learned messaging. What made people actually want to buy the product? What differentiators were most important to people and solved real pain for them? And actually, when we actually decided to approach Graham, he had a great opportunity at Grafana already, being very early there. And I think I wanted to make sure that whoever we hired to actually go out and lead our sales team was someone that would be the best, objectively the best, right? And not someone who I was like, hey, we're doing this temporarily because the amount of revenue at the company is not as high. It's someone who would actually scale with the business tremendously and also be able to bridge the gaps that I have. I'm not someone that's going to figure out what the exact command of the message for our product is, despite the fact that I deeply understand our product, right? This is like a self-awareness piece that I think at our company, I try to make sure everyone has, which is that, hey, there's someone genuinely way better than me to do this. And who is the best person that could do this? And to be honest, I couldn't think of anyone better than Graham to actually go out and scale our sort of sales team. And for me, this was the big reason why I sort of did this was I have genuinely a lot of respect for building high quality sales organizations, right? Like sales is equally important to product at Codium. And for us, if one is successful and the other one isn't, we are still a failed company. Think about the number of companies that go public. It is a very rare occurrence, and our goal is to go public. And if we can't build a great sales function, we are screwed. This will fundamentally not happen. And I think some of the key principles that I believe in beyond just, hey, we need to build a great sales team, is Codium needs to be known as a company where great salespeople grow, right? And actually growth is fundamentally super important to me, that we become known as this generation's, hopefully Blade Logic, or this generation's MongoDB, effectively of startups. And that's what we're trying to build here. And finding someone that aligned on that vision was incredibly important to me.
So Varun, help us understand, where are you going with Codium? What is the where are you today, and what is the potential of where this could go?
So right now, Codium is a product that is largely in the IDE. We're starting to branch out beyond the IDE. The IDE is where developers actually write software. It's the part where they actually build the application. What we actually believe, or the mission of Codium, is to enable developers to dream bigger, right? And that sounds probably very fancy. Ultimately, what our goal is if a developer takes a year to go out and build a project, I would like it to be the case that they can use Codium, and instead it would take them weeks, maybe a couple weeks to a month to actually go out and build a project, right? And we want to work backwards from there. So what do we actually need to do to make that happen? Right now, Codium is used by some of the largest companies. A Fortune 10 company currently uses Codium. They have thousands of developers on the product. They're noticing 43% of all their committed software is generated by Codium. And they're seeing an 18% reduction in PR cycle time. That's massive. That's a huge, huge reduction in the amount of time it takes to build applications, especially given how large a line item R&D is for them at the company. But I think the goal for us as a company is to actually make that number go down to 90 to 95%. So we want to make it so that the amount of time it takes to build applications goes down tremendously. I think there's good reason to believe that there is a lot more innovation that can be had in the space, right? And I guess a good way to actually think about this is the underlying technology that is affecting deep learning right now, or generative AI right now, are GPUs. And GPUs are getting faster by a couple X every year. To put that into perspective, if you think about databases as a category, hard drives and SSDs are getting faster by a couple % every year. So it's effectively 100 times faster that this underlying technology is getting faster. So we think that there's going to be a tremendous amount of innovation here. I think the goal for Codium here is, anywhere a developer does work, how do we actually build technology that leverages AI to actually fundamentally sort of reduce the amount of time it takes to get that done? And an example here is, hey, let's say Codium makes it 10 times faster to build software. Hey, that does mean we also need to make it 10 times faster to review software, because that'll become a bottleneck. And that's the goal for the company. Right now, developers spend time designing software, reviewing software, deploying software, debugging software, testing software, right? Navigating software and writing software. And the goal for the company is find every aspect of the software development lifecycle and cut it down. It's a very ambitious goal. This is going to be a problem that is fundamentally harder than self-driving cars, right? If you think about it, and I'm oversimplifying, self-driving cars, largely speaking, only press the brakes, press the accelerator, or turn the steering wheel, right? But think about the number of unique things that a software developer does, right? Obviously, the safety requirements for building software are less than for a self-driving car, but this is a very, very technical problem. And I think this is one of those cases where two things are very important. We need to continue to innovate as a company, but while we're innovating, we need to be tethered to reality. We can't just be a vision company that's like, hey, we're going to change the world, and we don't ship anything. We need to be shipping things that our customers find useful. We need to be growing our distribution incredibly fast, and this is where having a best-in-class go-to-market team is very important. And that enables us to build better trust and sort of partnership with our customers as well. And I think both of those are very important for us to be sort of an enduring business. And I think this can be one of the large companies or the large software companies similar to Salesforce in the long term. And for us at Codium, our goal here is not to be tied to any platform, any cloud provider, any IDE, any languages, unlike GitHub, right? So this means that I believe as a company, we can be much better partners to our customers. So in the short term, some of the big advantages we have are flexibility of deployment, actually working wherever the customer is, and being personalized to the private data inside the company. And that doesn't matter if the company is storing their data in Microsoft-based services or not, right? Think about the number of services that companies have that are not Microsoft-based. I think our plan here is, how do we build the best product? Not how do we build the best product that works within the Microsoft ecosystem. And I think you can see this with some of the largest companies we work with. Companies as big as Dell that have 40,000 developers are committed to using Codium internally. And I think that's just going to be the beginning for us. Some of the world's largest companies are going to become more and more sort of visibly using Codium internally. And it's going to be exciting to see how the next 5 years unfolds.
What are some of the big learnings you've learned about yourself in this journey? And what are your kind of areas that you'd be really working on in order to be able to, keep up with the pace of, what you're doing and what you're growing and scaling here?
I think humility is incredibly important, right? I think basically this idea of being right is not very valuable. It's more important to be valuable than be right. And actually, if we are making decisions and optimizing purely for being right, we are probably most of the times too late. As a company, you got to make decisions when you kind of only have 60 to 70% of the information, right? Because if you only make the decision when you have 95 to 100% of the information, you've probably underinvested in that resource. Yes, you are right, but you were right when everyone else was also right. And then there's no advantage there. And I think one of the important things that I've learned at a startup is, hey, question basically everything you're doing, right? And you don't want to get into a state of complete paralysis, but try to question, hey, has the state of the market changed? Has the state of technology changed? And especially in a space like AI, technology changes very quickly. And in that case, how should we be reacting? And I think I look at these changes as being advantages to us, because I actually believe a startup is much more quickly able to move and change direction when these kind of changes happen than a large company can. Right? It takes them some time to see a problem, to agree on the problem, to commit to a solution, to distribute the solution, to apply the solution. That all can happen in a startup in the matter of days when it takes quarters at a large company. That comes with the risk of not really having a lot of psychological safety, right? You kind of need to always believe, hey, the decision I made the last couple of weeks was potentially wrong, right? But at the same time, if you embrace that idea and embrace the idea of there is only one constant in a startup, and that's variability, it actually makes running a company substantially easier, right? When you realize being right is not that important, you can just tell people. And I think I'm very transparent at the company. I don't know the answer to this. There's a good chance I'm wrong. But hey, if I'm wrong, we'll roll it back.
So what's your process of doing that, Varun? Are you kind of do you set specific times when you start to reflect on things? Do you do it in kind of a journal? How do you manage that process whilst managing so many other things?
One thing that probably feels pretty small, but I actually still walk with my co-founder for probably around 5 to 6 hours every week, just discussing the high-level trends that we see in the space. How does this affect us? And we're ruthlessly honest, being like, hey, we're behind on this. How did we miss on this? What are the right ways that we cannot miss on this going forward? And the moment we realize that we have done something, our goal is not to be, hey, the org is not too flexible. We need to wait a month to actually make this change. We make the change very quickly, right? And by the way, there are some downsides of this, right? Which is that you can't be making changes every week that contradict each other, right? At that point, you will burn everyone at the company out. And especially, you can't be going and changing the command of the message on your reps every week, right? So that's a recipe for disaster internally. When we were making a couple million in revenue and we were 8 people, some of the conventional feedback for us was, wow, this company is doing very well. But internally for us, we dream of being a very, very large company. We want to be a company that's making billions in revenue. And I think the way we sort of look at it is not, hey, we suck, we got to get better. It's like, how could we be a much better company? How could we be a company that actually grows 2 times faster? What are the things we could do to actually be a truly, truly generational company? And I think we try to instill that mentality of like, hey, there's always better. Yes, we are one of the fastest growing companies of all time in terms of enterprise revenue, but how much more fast could we be operating? And I think that sort of motivates us to look at it in a much more positive light.
What is driving your success, Varun? Or not necessarily your success, but what is it that really motivates you, personally? What is it that gets you up in the morning?
One huge thing is I would like to be a meaningful piece of a vision that actually changes the world, right? And that's fundamentally why even after college I decided to go out and work in an autonomous vehicle company rather than some enterprise software company that automates text messages. Right? I think these sort of ideas don't really motivate me nearly as much. I think we have a massive vision that we are playing for right now. we could fundamentally disrupt the way technology gets built. And I think the sort of, for me right now, it feels like a privilege to be able to actually be a part of this. And then I have this probably trait that I hate losing. For me, I'm a big endurance athlete, or I used to before the company. I used to bike a tremendous amount, and I think just I hate the idea of not hitting a goal. And maybe right now I feel like we could be something massive, and now I don't want to let go, and we just got to keep getting bigger and bigger.
Mate, can I ask you, how were you able to convince Carlos and Sahir to pay attention to you so early?
I don't know. You should ask them. To be honest, given the fact that
that should be my take to Carlos, right?
Yeah, given we pivoted the company, I would say like they were probably wrong about our idea as wrong as we were, but maybe they just liked me and my co-founder. You would have to ask them.
Well, Varun, I think this is the time where we really reflect on what we've spoken about today in what's been a truly fascinating, inspirational conversation, right? I think you're obviously someone that graduated from an amazing college, MIT, full of big dreams, full of big ideas. But I think what's really interesting here is that there was a lot of substance there, and you really invested your time going and doing those internships. Those early internships enabled you to really immerse yourself, not only from a product perspective, but really understand what is the balance that's required here to make an organization successful. And I think what's fundamental is that as a technology founder, a lot of the time you can be very technology minded, very technology focused, and very almost obsessed with finding the answers in technology. But I think what those early experiences really enabled for you was to really understand that you have to understand the customer pain. And you spoke about painkillers versus vitamins, and the importance of really creating something which is scalable. Before you go and pour gasoline, there has to be a fire. Varun, we really appreciate you coming onto the podcast today. It's been an absolute pleasure. I know that you've watched quite a few of the podcasts as well, so we do appreciate that. And it's been fantastic having you on the show. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story, Varun.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. It's been great being on after being such a long-time listener.
To all our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in today. If you've liked what you've heard, please do subscribe to our various channels, Apple Podcast, iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. All the links will be in the description below. And we look forward to welcoming you back for another session very soon. Goodbye.